My husband forgot to hang up the phone with me, and what I heard next changed everything. He didn't realize I was still on the line when he told someone, "Our marriage is miserable, but I'm only with her because of her family's money." I didn't drop the phone. I didn't scream. I didn't even breathe. I just sat there on the edge of our bed, staring at the wall, waiting for it to make sense. Then his voice came through again, careless, too honest. "Her dad's loaded, man. You think I'd still be here if there wasn't a trust fund behind it?" Someone else laughed, low and muffled, like they were talking over drinks. "So, you're just going to ride it out?" There was a pause. Then he said, calm and confident, 2 more years, maybe 3. Then I'll have enough to walk. She won't even see it coming. She's too comfortable." I ended the call. My hand didn't shake. That came later. At that moment, I just stared at the screen like it had delivered a death sentence. And in a way, it had. Not of a person, but of a version of my life I thought was real. 3 years of marriage unraveled in seconds. Every late-night talk, every laugh, every fight we'd resolved. All of it suddenly felt like a performance. I sat back, feeling the weight of what I'd heard settle in my chest. There was no screaming, no breakdown, just silence. A hollow, suffocating silence where my heartbeat felt too loud. I opened the drawer where I kept our wedding photos. There was one we both loved, a candid shot of us laughing in the rain, soaked and alive. I used to think that moment was genuine. Now, I wondered if he'd already been calculating, if he'd seen the daughter of a wealthy man instead of the person beside him. I opened the drawer where I kept our wedding photos. There was one we both loved, a candid shot of us laughing in the rain, soaked and alive. I used to think that moment was genuine. Now I wondered if he'd already been calculating, if he'd seen the daughter of a wealthy man instead of the person beside him. I remembered how fast our engagement moved, how effortlessly he'd charmed my family. My dad, always cautious, took longer to warm up, but even he eventually said my husband seemed solid. My mom was proud. "You picked someone with good instincts," she'd said. Had I? That night, I didn't sleep. I lay beside the man who just confirmed he didn't love me, who saw our marriage as an investment. His breathing was steady, peaceful. I wondered if he had any idea how loud the silence felt on my side of the bed. The next morning, I acted normal. I made coffee, like always. He came downstairs in sweatpants, kissed my head, and told me, "Yeah," I lied. "Like a rock," he joked, pouring his half cup, no sugar. He asked if I was working from home. I nodded. Just a few calls. I watched him scroll through his phone, noticed the way he checked our shared calendar, how he tapped a notification and quickly swiped it away. I didn't ask. I'd stopped wanting to know. When he left, I opened my laptop and typed out what I'd heard, word for word. I needed it preserved. Not for court, for myself. Because I knew there would be days ahead when I'd doubt what I heard, when I'd question if I was overreacting. That note would remind me I wasn't crazy. That afternoon, I drove to my parents' house, but didn't go in. I sat outside, staring at the porch. I couldn't tell them. Not yet. My dad would ask for proof. My mom would blame herself. And I couldn't carry their pain along with my own. So I went home before he did. Lit a candle, put on soft music, made dinner. When he walked in, he smiled like always. "Smells amazing," he said, kissing my cheek. "I missed you." "I missed you too," I said. We ate dinner. He talked about a pitch meeting that went well. Some investor interested in his startup. I asked questions, played the supportive wife. I knew he was hoping for a buy-in from my father someday. That had always been the unspoken goal. After dinner, he poured wine, turned on the fireplace, and we watched a movie. I didn't care about it. I just observed him. Every expression, every move, studying the pattern I'd been too blind to see before. I went to bed before him, told him I was tired. He said he'd join me soon. As I lay there, his words echoed. She's too comfortable. She won't see it coming. But I saw it now, and I wouldn't stay comfortable for long. The next morning, I woke before the alarm. Not because I couldn't sleep, but because I didn't want to. The bed felt foreign. His touch, once comforting, now made my skin crawl. I showered in silence and stared at my reflection. I looked ordinary. You'd never guess that less than 48 hours earlier, I'd overheard my husband plotting his exit strategy. Not because we'd grown apart, but because I came with money attached. In the kitchen, I made coffee out of habit, but didn't drink it. The motion grounded me. He came down, hair damp, wearing the same sweatshirt he always did on work-from-home days. "You're up early," he said. "Didn't sleep great. Too much wine? Maybe." He kissed my head, and I flinched. Not visibly, but enough that I felt it. He didn't notice. Maybe he never noticed anything that didn't affect his plan. After breakfast, I sat with my laptop open, pretending to work. 3 years of marriage, gone in 3 minutes of overheard truth. Was he lying every time he told me I looked beautiful? When he cried at our wedding? When he talked about having kids? Was that part of the plan too? I thought back to our first apartment, the 1-bedroom downtown. We used to share cheap wine on the fire escape, laughing about the future. I believed in us then. I told my sister, "He makes the world feel solid." I was wrong. The foundation had cracked a long time ago. At noon, I sat on the edge of our bed, replaying everything. I stripped away the rose-colored filters from our memories and started seeing them clearly. How he always preferred upscale restaurants when my parents were around. How he'd go quiet whenever money came up, unless something was being gifted to us. How he convinced me to lease a new car in my name because my credit was better. I used to call it practicality. Now I saw it for what it was. He hadn't fallen out of love. He'd never been in love at all. I opened our photo gallery. Vacations, birthdays, silly selfies. I zoomed in on one picture where he was smiling beside me. But his eyes weren't on me. They were looking past the camera, already planning the next move. I saved a few photos, not out of nostalgia, but documentation. Something in me had shifted. That evening, he was in the living room working on a pitch deck. He didn't offer details. He never did. When he asked what I wanted for dinner, I said I wasn't hungry. He offered to cook anyway. "Let me take care of you," he said, humming an old song from when we first met. I wondered if he hummed it for her too, whoever she was. I didn't ask. I just watched. By now, I wasn't falling apart. I was waking up. Every move he made became part of a study, a performance I'd finally stopped believing in. 3 days had passed since the phone call. 3 days of watching him act normal, brushing his teeth, making coffee, kissing my cheek. The scariest part wasn't his betrayal. It was how ordinary he seemed. Thursday morning, he offered to drive me to work. "You look tired," he said. Figured I'd make your morning easier. I almost said yes. The old me would have been touched. But now, I just smiled and said, "It's okay. I've got a stop to make after." He nodded easily. "Dinner tonight? That steakhouse your dad likes." "Of course, the one my parents paid for the last 2 times." "Sure," I said. At work, I couldn't focus. His words echoed in my head. She won't see it coming. Over lunch, I called my sister. I didn't tell her the truth. I just needed to hear her voice. "You sound off," she said. "Just tired. Work stuff. How's the husband?" I hesitated. "He's fine, same as always." And that's when it hit me. He really was the same, because nothing had changed for him. This was always his plan. That evening at dinner, he ordered wine and made a toast to us and our future. "Do you ever think about where we'll be in 5 years?" he asked, cutting into his steak. "What do you mean?" "Just bigger things. You know, your family has such a strong network. Sometimes I think we could be doing more with it." His tone was careful, rehearsed, like he'd practiced. "That's pretty vague," I said. He laughed, hollowly. "Guess I'm still figuring it out." Later that night, he slept soundly. No guilt, no tension, just peace. I stayed awake, not thinking of revenge, but clarity. Trying to understand how someone could share your life, your bed, your plans, while plotting to leave once they'd taken enough. The next few days, I started paying closer attention. Not snooping, just observing. When he said, "I love you," I watched his eyes. They looked past me, unfocused. When he texted, "Thinking of you," at lunch, it arrived at the exact same time as yesterday. Routine, not affection. By Sunday, I felt like I was living with a stranger. Or maybe I finally saw the stranger I'd married. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with a coffee I didn't drink, listing everything that suddenly made sense. His expensive taste when my parents joined us, his silence about debt, his quick push for joint accounts. It wasn't dramatic. That's what made it dangerous. He didn't see it as betrayal, just strategy. By Monday, his performance continued as usual. "Don't work too hard," he said before leaving. I started documenting details, timestamps, spending patterns, habits, not for proof, for myself, to remember this wasn't in my head. Each note built a picture I could finally see clearly. And with each day that passed, my grief became something sharper. Not rage, but resolve. Because I knew the moment I'd stop pretending, his carefully built world would start to crumble. And I'd be ready. He started with short messages. "What are you up to?" "Thinking about you. Let me know if you need anything." I replied when I felt like it. Short answers, no emojis. I wasn't being cold. I just didn't feel the need to play along anymore. By the third message, he sent a voice note. "You've been quiet today. Everything good?" His voice was careful, soft, the kind of tone people use when they sense something slipping away. That night, he showed up at my office unannounced. He stood in the lobby, holding coffee and a bag of pastries from a cafe I used to love. "Figured you could use a break," he said, trying to sound casual. But his eyes searched my face for clues. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Yeah," he said. "Just missed you." I forced a polite smile. "Thanks for the coffee." He lingered longer than he should have, then kissed me goodbye. Not on the cheek or the forehead, but on the lips. Deliberate, like he wanted the staff to see, like he needed witnesses. That evening, He cooked dinner again for the third night in a row. He even bought candles I hadn't touched in months, trying to recreate a meal we'd once shared years ago on a rainy night. "Remember this?" he asked, pointing to the pasta. I nodded. "You added too much garlic that time." He smiled, but I could see the strain behind it. After dinner, he suggested we take a few days off, just us. Disconnect. Go somewhere quiet. He kept saying quiet like it was a cure. I said maybe and went upstairs alone. From the hallway mirror, I watched his reflection as he stood at the sink, drying dishes with more force than necessary. By Wednesday, the flowers came back, this time delivered to my office. Bigger, flashier. A handwritten note said, "Just because you deserve the world." It didn't feel romantic. It felt like pressure. My coworker smiled when she saw them. "He's really putting in the effort, huh?" I just nodded. The next morning, he brought up looking at properties. "Not to move right now," he said quickly. "Just to see what's out there. Dream a little." I asked why. He hesitated, then said, "It's good to have vision." But I saw it for what it was, an attempt to anchor me to a future that revolved around him. Thursday night, I decided to test something. Casually, while scrolling my phone, I mentioned that my family might be scaling back on some investments, that my dad had become more private, less inclined to share numbers. He didn't react right away, but later that night, I caught him whispering on the phone in the hallway. I couldn't make out the words, but his tone was tight, urgent. Friday morning, he brought me breakfast in bed. He hadn't done that since our first year. He sat beside me, watching me eat like I might vanish. "I've been thinking," he said slowly. "We should talk more. Really talk." "About what?" I asked. "Us, our future, how we're doing." "How do you think we're doing?" He swallowed. "I don't know. Sometimes you seem far away." "Do I?" He reached for my hand. "I don't want to lose what we've built." I let him hold it, let him talk, but I didn't return the words. I just listened, because it wasn't about fixing anything anymore. It was about watching him realize he was losing control. That night, he cried. Not loud or dramatic, just a few quiet tears as he sat on the couch pretending to scroll his phone. I didn't ask why. I didn't comfort him. And I think, for the first time, he knew that I saw it. By Saturday, something inside me had shifted. The notebook I'd been keeping, filled with dates, inconsistencies, observations, was nearly full. Seeing everything laid out like that, I knew I couldn't keep pretending. That afternoon, I called my parents. "Can I come over? I need to talk about something important." They were waiting in the kitchen when I arrived, worry written across their faces. I sat down. "I need to tell you something about him, about our marriage." I told them what I'd overheard on the phone, the tone, the words, how casually he'd discussed our relationship like it was a transaction. My voice stayed calm, no tears, just the truth. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father was quiet for a long time before asking, "How long have you?" Driving home, I felt lighter. Not because it was over, but because I wasn't carrying it alone anymore. That evening, I suggested dinner out, a test. I wanted to see if he could still perform when I wasn't giving him the responses he craved. He brightened immediately. "Really? Where do you want to go?" "Somewhere nice," I said. "Your choice." He chose the steakhouse, of course. At dinner, he was animated, almost giddy, talking about summer plans, redecorating ideas. business concepts. He ordered wine without asking me. Halfway through the meal, I asked, "What would you do if my family's financial situation changed?" He froze. "What do you mean?" "Like if the trust were restructured, or if my dad stepped back from certain investments. What would that mean for your plans?" He set his fork down. "Why are you asking?" "Just curious." He studied me for a moment, then forced a smile. "It wouldn't change anything. I mean, yeah, maybe some opportunities would look different. But that's not why I'm here." "No, of course not," I said. He reached across the table, took my hand. "I'm here because I love you." I let him take it, but didn't squeeze back. "That's good to know." But his eyes had changed. The easy confidence was gone, replaced by calculation. When we got home, he went quiet, said he had emails to catch up on, disappeared into his office. I heard his voice later, low and urgent behind the door. I didn't need to listen. I already knew. That night, lying in bed, I stared at the ceiling. I thought about the conversation at dinner, the way his expression shifted the moment money entered the picture. How his first concern wasn't my family's well-being, but opportunity. And I realized I'd been asking myself the wrong question. It wasn't, can I forgive him? It was, do I want to keep pretending I don't know who he really is? The answer was simple. I didn't. By Sunday, the decision had settled inside me. Calm, steady. No rage, no outburst, just clarity. He cooked again that night. Candles lit, table set. "Something special," he said. "Just us." I let him have his moment, watched him play the part one last time. Then, as he cleared the plates, I said, "I want to talk about the call." He froze. "What call?" "The one you forgot to hang up." His mouth opened, then closed. "I heard everything," I said quietly. "Every word." "It wasn't what you think." "You said our marriage was awful." "I was venting. I didn't mean it." "You said you're only with me because of my family's money." "I was being stupid. Guys say things when they're frustrated." "You called me clueless." He clenched his jaw. "It was a joke. You said I'd never see it coming." Silence. He sat down, leaning forward. "Look, I've made mistakes. Maybe I've relied too much on your family's generosity, but that doesn't mean I don't love you. Doesn't it?" "No," he said firmly. "I married you because I love you. Everything else is just circumstance." I studied him. "When we first met, how long did it take you to ask about my family?" He blinked. "What do you mean? First date? Second?" "I don't remember." "Second," I said. "You asked what my parents did, and when I told you about the business, you got interested. By the third date, you'd already read an article about my father, one you wouldn't have found unless you were looking." He flushed. "I was interested in your life. Is that what you call it?" He stood, agitated. "You're twisting everything." "Then explain the pattern," I said. "The restaurants you picked when my parents were paying. The way you go quiet when I mention budgeting. The business ideas that always need my father's connections. Those are practical considerations." "For who?" He ran a hand through his hair. "You're being unfair. Couples leverage each other's strengths." "And what do I bring?" He hesitated. "You bring kindness, intelligence, and money," I finished. He deflated. "That's not what I was going to say, but it's what you were thinking." He sank back into his chair. "I don't know how to convince you." "You can't," I said, "because I heard who you really are when you thought I wasn't listening." He was silent for a long time. Then, finally, "What happens now?" "You should stay somewhere else for a while." "For how long?" "I don't know yet." "And us?" There is no us. Not anymore. He looked at me across the table, the candles flickering between us, dinner gone cold. I never meant for you to get hurt, he said. I know, I replied. You never meant for me to find out. That night, I listened to him clean the kitchen, quiet, methodical, dismantling the fantasy meal that was supposed to fix everything. He left the next morning. No suitcase, just a backpack and a laptop. I just want to give you space, he said, standing in the doorway. I didn't respond, just locked the door behind him. The silence that followed wasn't dramatic. It was peaceful. He texted twice that day. I'm sorry. I still love you. I didn't reply. The messages escalated, pleading, emotional, guilt-laced. Then came the letter. 4 handwritten pages about his insecurities, his failures, his excuses. A carefully worded confession without truth. He ended it with, "Let me show you who I really am." But I already knew. By the next week, lawyers were involved. The process was quiet, methodical. His mask slipped fast, pleasantries replaced by terms like fair share and joint assets. The documents told the truth. He never would. Hidden transfers, false business names, money sent to another woman. When my lawyer read the details aloud, I didn't cry. I just felt the slow burn of anger, the kind that comes from realizing someone never thought you'd look closely enough to see. He walked into mediation smiling, like it was all a misunderstanding. I didn't smile back. When it was over, he walked away with nothing that wasn't his. 3 months later, it was done. Divorce finalized, name restored, accounts closed, keys collected. He disappeared, moved to another city, reinvented himself online as a man who'd grown through hardship. I didn't care. I moved somewhere small, quiet, mine. Started over. He sent one last email. I never stopped loving you. I deleted it. Not out of anger, but peace. Because closure doesn't always come from forgiveness. Sometimes it comes from silence, from waking up and realizing you don't have to measure your words or manage someone's moods anymore, from finally being free. And that was enough.